You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanders,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Johanna Mo on the show with me. She has an amazing new book. It's called The Night Singer, and if you love thrillers the way I do, this is a must-have on your to-be-read pile. And, you know, the weather is breaking a little bit. We're getting into the cooler months here. And this is one of those books that you just want to curl up with and have a great adventure. I love the book. I'm telling everyone about it. Johanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
I'm excited to have you today, Johanna. We begin each show with the same question. And that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Yeah. I've wanted to write since I learned how to read, but the first strong memory connected to becoming a writer is when I borrowed a book from my older sister. I don't remember the exact title, but it was something like Writers on Writing, and the book consisted of interviews with writers where they mainly spoke about their process, and that's the first time I felt like, wow, this is a job you can actually have.
Right.
Yeah. And I've always felt that that's the only job I could have, being happy with.
I know that feeling that you're talking about, because there's a point when you're young and you just kind of assume that books just have always been, like they just came out of the ether or whatever, you know, by some sort of strange magic or something. But when you realize that books come from people and, you know, people write them and then other people help to edit them and publish them, and, you know, there's someone else involved in the process that makes covers and all of that stuff. And you realize that they're just people like me. And if they could do it, then maybe I could do it.
Yeah.
I love that. Did you, were you a bookish kid? Did you read a lot?
I was an extremely bookish kid. Yeah.
What were some of your favorite stories that do you, can you remember a book or an author or a book series that just let you realize that books could take you to another place?
I read Narnia when I was quite young. C.H. Lewis. But I don't remember that much from my younger years, but I remember more from my teens. And I read a lot of Agatha Christie and Stephen King and those kind of writers then.
Where does your love of thrillers and crime fiction come from?
Yeah, that came from those writers. I just kind of have the feeling of just wanting to turn another page before quitting, and I never could quit because I just wanted to keep going. That's what I loved about thrillers. But I loved fantasy as well, just to kind of get into a totally different world.
Yeah. You know, I've heard from so many different writers that and writers that go on to write in all sorts of genres. But there's an interesting thing that Narnia and Lord of the Rings and some of these great fantasies that we think of as cornerstones of the genre, those have influenced so many people that go on to write in all sorts of genres, that there's a connective tissue there that I can't quite put my finger on.
Yeah, and that's what made me want to become a writer as well, because I wanted to give that to others, that feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You're from Sweden, and there is a over the last well 10 years specifically, and although it's been going on for a lot longer, but there's been a kind of a surge of Scandinavian crime fiction that has just kind of taken, America, especially. I can only speak as an American, kind of by storm. That there's all these great stories that have come out of there. What is it about this place in particular that has just spawned such great crime fiction?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, but I still don't have a good answer to it. I don't know. I think it's crime fiction is big here. A lot of people want to write it, so there are a lot of good books. I don't know. I really don't know. It's dark here.
Yeah. Do you think that plays into it some, maybe?
Maybe, I don't know. And the island I write about, it's very barren and very. There are not a lot of people there.
Yeah.
It's a good place. It's a good place for writing these kind of stories.
Well,
and there are a lot of places like that in Sweden.
Well, one thing that I find very interesting, and this happens all over the world, but Sweden and Scandinavia in particular, I've met a number of authors who write just some of the most disturbing crime fiction that comes from there. But when you meet them, they're just the sweetest people with the, just generous and just loving people. And you think, wow, there's something about that place that just really brings out some literary darkness.
Yeah, Swedes are known for being a bit laid back, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't really write those kind of crime stories.
Right.
I'm more into the less bloody kind.
Well, everyone loves a great mystery. That's a universal thing. No matter what country you're in or from, everyone loves a good mystery and for to try to kind of solve along the way as you're reading through the story. Do you think that goes back to your early experiences with Agatha Christie and such?
Yeah, I think it does. But I would say my main focus isn't maybe the mystery. It's more the people who are thrown into difficult situations, and how they kind of try to deal with it. When
you're thinking about a new story, and let's just say this, The Night Singer is your first book to be published here in the United States. But you have written and published a number of books in your native Sweden. When you're first thinking of a story, what comes first for you? Is it a character, because you were alluding to that, or is it a kind of a what if situation? What if a character found herself in this scenario? What would she do? What's that first thing that comes to you?
For me, it's definitely the character. Yeah, it is. And after that, it's, well, what happens if I put this character in this situation? Yeah, but it starts with the character.
Gotcha. Are you a planner or a pantser? Do you plan out the novel before you write it, or do you discover it as you go?
I do now. I didn't start as a planner. My first two books, which weren't crime novels, I didn't plan at all, and I ended up rewriting. And after that, I kind of just wanted to try another way. So my third book, which was my first crime novel, I planned. I mean, really planned, scene by scene. And now I've kind of go back to planning a little. I plan the characters who are going to be in the story, what is going to happen, who is going to die? Why is this person going to die? And I have a loose plan, and then I start writing. But for me, the plan is just a map. I mean, if it doesn't work, I toss it away.
I've
But
met no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Planning. I need some
Gotcha.
planning. Yeah.
Gotcha. I've met some planners who, plan out the book and outline it and then strictly write what's on the outline. Like every day they check in. Okay, I've got to write this scene now. I know this is coming, and then other people will use that outline to sort of solidify the story in their mind, and then once they're finished with the outline, they never really refer back to it. They've kind of used that as a time to work out the problems ahead of time in their mind. Do you refer back to your outline, or I know that you said that if the outline's not working, then you'll scrap it. But how rigid are you with trying to maintain what you've worked out already?
I'm not rigid, but I keep it there because for me, I mean, it's a great way to put it, that it's about solidifying what's in my mind. That's what I do when I write the plan, and I keep it besides the computer when I write. But when I change the story, I make the change in the plan as well, because then I can sit and look at the plan and just kind of have the entire story in my head when I look at the plan. Because it's easier to look at the plan than to look at a manuscript, which is maybe 200 or 300 pages. So,
gotcha. When you start thinking about a new book and you've got the characters in mind, and then you start kind of figuring out what to do with the characters, when does the element of the mystery come in?
It comes in quite early as well, because I want to decide, who's going to die. And then I start thinking about who's going to do it and what are the motives for doing it. So that's really in the beginning for me. I don't always stick to that as well. Because I think better when I write. That's the problem. I can have a plan that looks great, but when I start writing, I just realize that it wasn't that great.
Well,
I just think better when I write.
And some people will say, well, the characters just do what they want to do when you start writing, and I'll have this planned out, but they decide to go off and do this thing. Do characters interact with you in that way? And writing is really the only profession that you can say that people you just made up talk to you and live actual lives. But you know what I'm saying. Do the characters have a mind of their own?
I know. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm not sure I would exactly describe it like that, because it doesn't feel like that. But it just feels like that I come up with things. I come up with new things that I want to try and just see what happens if I go that way instead. But in every scene I write, I try to kind of get into my characters. I try to think, what are they thinking? How are they reacting? And just kind of, I just want to make it real, to make it, feel real for the reader.
Your new book, The Night Singer, is the first book in a new series, The Island Murders. Your previous books that you've published, have they been standalones or have they been in a series?
I've written one crime series before and one standalone. Yeah. And my first series consisted of 4 books.
Authors, I have a fantastic new service to tell you about. It's called PubSite. PubSite is a service to help you build your very own website, your home on the web, where you can promote your work and give your fans a place to connect with you. PubSite is a website platform that allows every author, regardless of budget, to have a great-looking professional website developed by the book marketing professionals at FSB Associates. PubSite is the new, easy-to-use DIY website builder developed specifically for books and authors. Whether you're an author of one book or 20, or a small publisher, PubSite allows you to build, design, and most importantly, update your website pain-free. No need to be dependent on a designer or webmaster to make a small but costly change to your website. Save the money and do it yourself. PubSite is the best platform for authors because it's a book-centric platform. PubSite was built just for authors and small publishers. Every design, feature, and layout is book-centric. They have customized designs for you to use. It's easy to build. No coding or HTML is necessary to create a stunning, professional-looking website with all the features you want. Get a custom domain name, yourname.com. It's simple to update. You can add all of your books, add a blog and a book tour, sell from any retailer, manage your email list and social media, and even do e-commerce. Build your website with a 14-day free trial, then pay just $19.99 per month, which includes hosting. And we offer packages starting at $499 to set up the website for you. Pub-site.com, the place to help authors find their home on the web. Looking for a tool to help you visualize your story before the drafting begins? Plot Pens is cloud-based and optimized for any device. There's nothing to download. From the new writer who isn't sure how to tell their story to the veteran who can increase their productivity dramatically, we've had experienced writers lay out a detailed structure for several novels in a series in a matter of a few days. The app takes you through 4 steps of the process: the concept or log line. Make sure you have a solid concept that you can keep coming back to throughout the process. The outline, 12 beats and 3 acts, each has a description of what should be happening with examples. The board, 40 cards. We take the 12 beats and add sub-beats to those, breaking it down even further and being very specific about what should go into each. These also have examples and descriptions. Right. We take those 40 cards and turn them into a to-do list. For a 50,000 word book, it's about 2 cards per chapter roughly. We have a beautiful editor built into the app. You can export your manuscript to a PDF anytime with the click of a button. Let Plot Pens help you visualize your writing project. Use code HANK10 to get 10% off Plot Pens. plotpens.com.
How do you feel about the difference in a series character and a standalone character? And do you know when you begin a book if this is that this is, this character will carry on for more than one book, or do you think in terms of, well, this is going to be her one shot?
Yeah, I usually know that because my first series, I knew from the beginning that it was going to be 4 books, and I did 4 books. But after that, I was a bit tired of series, so I wanted to write a standalone, and I had absolutely no plan of continuing it, and I'm not going to do that, even though some people want me to. But the difference when I started this series was that I didn't want to set a number. I made a plan for 3 books because I felt that I couldn't tell the story of my main character, Hannah Duncker, in less than 3 books. But after maybe the second book, I felt that, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this in 3 books. So they're actually going to be at least 5, I think. Because it's important for me that the feeling is right, that I really want to do it. Yeah, because I don't see myself as the writer who writes, maybe 10 or 15 books in one series. I don't think I can keep my own interest alive for that long.
Right. Do you feel like that the stakes are different when writing a standalone as opposed to a series book? Like if it's book 2 in a series, and we know that there's going to be at least 3 or 5 books in a series, then then we know that our main character is probably not going to die in this book. There's so but in a standalone, we don't know if these characters will make it to the end, or if you might do something horrible to a character that we love. Do you think about those things? That there are certain places you cannot go in a series, or and even though you can do anything in a standalone, do you want to do that to readers, and would it be in the best interest of this character? You know what I mean? Are the stakes different?
Yeah, the stakes are different. But I try to, I don't know, I try to think not about I don't know how to put it, not about the limitations, but the pros of the choice I make, if it's a standalone or if it's a series. Because the reason why I like series is that I like to work with a background story, a story that I can keep alive for more than one book, at the same time as each book has its separate investigation that kind of ends with the book, but the background story continues.
Johanna, I heard a story, I think about you crossing paths with a homicide, someone involved in a homicide with two men, and I can't remember the details. I heard this on another interview that you did, I think.
Yeah.
But could you tell us that story and how that brought you into being intrigued with telling these kinds of stories?
Yeah, I think that played a large part in me becoming a crime writer, even though I didn't realize that from the beginning. Because I'm from the south of Sweden, a small town called Kalmar, but I live in Stockholm now, the capital. And all my previous books before this series is about Stockholm. And then I just kind of felt that I needed to write about my hometown and where I come from. And then I realized that, yeah, I have to do this story. I have to write about this. That's been with me for so long. It happened when I was 15. This is a crime that's been written a lot about in Sweden, because it was a female taxi driver who went missing, and 3 guys were arrested for involvement in her murder. And they were young. They were in their 20s and they had no prior records. And they were paid by her ex-husband to do it. And everyone in my hometown talked about it because the guys were from there. And one of those guys was my sister's boyfriend. And I also worked in the same cafe as one of the guys. And that it was such a shock, because we were friends with his family as well. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was just kind of, I don't know, a weird experience. It was just the realization that people killed.
Right.
I don't know.
That's we talked earlier about that realization when you realize that real people write books. It's also another one of those realizations when you realize that, well, people really can do horrible things, and that's kind of your view of the world changes a little bit.
It does. Yeah, it really did change. And I also, as I said, everyone talked about it, but what I remember most is the silence, because we couldn't talk about it. It was it was too much of a shock. Yeah. Wow.
Your new book takes place in an island community, and the title for the series is The Island Murders. What is it about a small island community like this that makes it so different than cities in the mainland? Like, is there a a difference in the way that people that live on the island view themselves and then view the outside world? Does that add a layer of complexity to telling the story?
Yeah, it definitely adds a layer. This island is outside the city where I grew up, and it's connected by a long bridge. I spent a lot of time on this island because my grandparents had a farm there. And when I realized that I was going to do this series, I started visiting the island a lot. And I remember one of my first visits there, I read the local newspaper, and there was an ad about a crime that had been committed. And the journalist was, pointing out that the criminals were from the mainland. That was the most important thing about them. Because it is kind of us against them. Actually, sometimes, yeah. But I just love this island because it's a beautiful place. And it's very flat, and it's very windy. And just exposed to the elements.
Yeah, and that affects people. That affects the way people view themselves, the way they interact with the world, and it's interesting to me. It's really fascinating the way that a place kind of molds people, to the way it is. It's interesting to see the different kinds of stories that can come because a place looks and feels different.
Yeah, and that's what, as I said before, all my other stories takes place in Stockholm, and I just kind of felt like I don't want to write a story in a city anymore. I want to write a story that takes place in the countryside, where people are more dependent on each other. Yeah.
Tell me about the character of Hannah, who she is such a fascinating character to me. The police detective she's we're kind of seeing the story, through her eyes, in a way, and then her partner Eric. Where did she come from?
She came from me wanting to write about how it is to be related to someone who commits a murder. When she was 19, and she was just about to graduate, her father was arrested for murder, and her reaction was to flee. She graduated and left the island. And she had a brother, and he fled as well. He moved even further away. He moved to London. And the contact with the father was really difficult, because she had once really loved her father, and they had a good relationship. And then he does this. She just doesn't know how to deal with it. And that's what I want to write about, how hard it can be. And eventually the father drinks himself to death, and Hannah has to go back and clean out the house. And then she realizes that she has to deal with what happened, because she hasn't led a good life in Stockholm. She's very lonely, and so she decides to move back. And that's where the Night Singer starts.
And it's so fascinating that she has this personal trauma that she's dealing with, and her, one of her ways of dealing with that is to become, a police officer herself, and a detective. And I think it's always fascinating when you see, because this plays out in real life all the time. We see people that choose professions based on something that they're wrestling with in their personal life, and that rings true in a very real way.
Yeah, that was what I was aiming for.
So the title is very provocative, The Night Singer. What does this allude to?
Actually, it alludes to the night singer is a nocturnal bird, and Sweden is divided into provinces, and Öland is the smallest one, and every province has its own animal, and the nightingale is the animal of Öland, and the nightingale is the night singer. So that's why I wanted to use it. But I also wanted to use it within the story. So I make up a story about it. And the story is that Hannah's grandmother gave Hannah a wooden nightingale, just kind of to work kind of like a dream catcher to help her with her nightmares. And she also gets a tattoo of a nightingale, and she clutches it a lot for comfort when she's in difficult situations. And the night singer is also in the story of the boy who gets murdered.
Right. The book feels a lot of ways like a great police procedural. Like you are very meticulous in how you portray the way that that the police would handle a situation like this. Did you get consultation from local police, or like where do you go to get those sorts of details that you put in the book that makes it ring so true?
Yeah, before I even started writing, I met with the two local detectives, and they showed me around the police station there and just answered my questions, and they answered all the questions I had throughout the writing, and they also read the manuscript once it was ready. Yeah.
What was that? Were you nervous to have them read? You know, what perception of what they
did? Extremely nervous, and I was also nervous because they were so friendly, and it was so nice when I visited the police station. And here I come and write about a lot of drama at the police station, and but they were very nice about it. Yeah.
I love that. Well, this is the first book in a new series, and you did you say that there would be 5 books in the series?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see these characters going from here?
Well, the second one has already been published in Sweden, and I'm working on the third one right now. The only thing I really have planned is what's going to happen with Hannah and the background story, Hannah and her father. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I can't wait to see where this series goes. We're going to send everyone to pick up their copy of The Night Singer. We're going to put links to it in the show notes of this episode, or go visit your local bookstore and pick it up. Johanna, if people are just discovering you, is there a place online where they can dig into all the stuff that you do and follow along with what's coming next?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. I have my own homepage, and I'm on Facebook as well. But on those pages, I write in Swedish. I've started to write some in English on Instagram.
Excellent. And what's your handle on Instagram?
It's Johanna Mo _4, which is short for författare, which is writer in English.
We'll put a link to that as well in the show notes to make it easier for folks to find you. Johanna, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. We're going to send everyone to pick up a copy of The Night Singer.
Yeah, thank you. It's been really fun.
Wargate Books presents Hit and Fade, Forgotten Ruin, Book 2, by Jason Anspach and Nick Cole. Narrated for you by Christopher Ryan Grant. Chapter 1, the army of the dead walked straight into our ambush east of Fortress Hawthorne. That's what the FOB is called now, Fortress Hawthorne. Despite it being officially known as Forward Operating Base Hawthorne, as was originally intended when the 50 detachments of various special operations groups came forward through time from Area 51. A one-way mission to save Western civilization from a rampaging nanoplague destroying the very fabric of said civilization. Apparently, we overshot the temporal insertion point and stuck the landing. Sorta. About 10,000 years too late. Said civilization is now basically something straight out of Tolkien or Dungeons and Dragons, which we've all now gotten a lot more familiar with thanks to our resident expert and fledgling hedge wizard, the infamous PFC Kennedy. But the Rangers just call it the FOB. The first of our explosives to ruin the leading elements of the army of the dead advancing on us, Claymore mines the recaptured forge back at Hawthorne had cranked out in the weeks after we'd retaken it from King Triton, were fired by Ranger Sergeant Kang down there with the scouts and Captain Knifehand's assaulters. It was close to midnight when the front rank of bony warriors, carrying rotting shields and spears, eyes glowing malevolently in the deep night mist, advanced into our ambush, only to get ruined by the daisy-chained claymores' sudden eruption. Above us, a cloud-shrouded moon cast a wan yellow light over the battlefield. The night was hot, and spring was coming on full now. The pilots who'd gotten us here in the grounded C-17 back at Ranger Alamo, using their meteorology skills, had guessed it was going to be a long, hot summer ahead of us, and an early one at that. But there was a cold shiver in the dark on your exposed skin that you couldn't quite explain when you saw the dead advancing rank after rank. The bone warriors, carrying spear and shield, other darker creatures barely seen. The lower areas of the earth were graveyard cool and misty, so maybe that was it. Still, the brutal, unrelenting cold of our almost last stand back at Ranger Alamo was gone now. But not the horrors. There wasn't a night that some ranger didn't wake up out of a tormented sleep, breathing heavy, sidearms scanning the dark and looking for orcs and ogres to ventilate. I was sweating in the hour leading up to the attack, despite the night and the mist. Kurtz had us humping hard to get the 240 and all its ammo up to the top of a small hill that overlooked the area where we'd channel the advancing echelons of the Army of the Dead into further fun and games the Rangers had planned at a bend in a riverbed. If the approaching Army of the Dead continued on their current course track, they'd enter it for a brief period. It was decided by the captain we'd kill them there. And I was sweating. Not because of fear. No, not at all. "Firing," whispered Sergeant Kang over the comm as he detonated the mines. And 8 daisy-chained claymores spat thousands of steel balls all across the front line of what even I was still finding it hard to believe I was seeing through my night vision device. Skeletons. Warrior skeletons. Ancient warriors like something out of the Bronze or Iron Ages. Worked breastplates of molded plate or rotting scales. Green and tarnished, stamped with the markings of fabled armies fallen in battles long, long ago. Leather cuirasses on some, rotting boots, helms with broken horns, missing teeth, tattered leather kilts, beads and charms dangling from bone wrists, enigmatic holy signs and primal torques black with grave dirt, or from a funeral pyre long ago on some forgotten battlefield far from here, draped about the spine where the throat should be, where it rises to connect to a bone-white skull that seems filled with malevolent purpose and diabolical intelligence. malignantly so. Walking skeletons like something out of a Ray Harryhausen clay model Sinbad epic from the 1960s. Above, the sliver of moon gave enough light to strengthen our NVGs, making the night vision devices perform exceptionally well as we sprang our trap and watched the advancing elements get rocked by our initial high-explosive opening bid in the game we were about to play. The air was still and hot in the moments before the fight began as we lay there in the tall, sharp grass, waiting for it all to go down. I was thinking a hot cup of coffee would be nice about now, except my canteen only had cold coffee I'd brewed during the long, silent, and windy afternoon of preparation. Still, I was happy knowing I had some, rather than none.